Hello everyone and welcome to Ful-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today on our Southampton review is a full team. Mozza, how you doing, buddy?
I'm all good, thank you. How's everyone else?
Good. Good. AJ, how you doing, mate?
Ecstatic.
And
Still,
obviously he wasn't here for the preview of this game, but he was actually at the game on Saturday, so we'll have quite a few questions for him. Drew, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. I'm doing well. Principally because I'm not in Southampton any longer, but that's a different conversation.
It's good to have you back anyway, and we're looking forward to getting your view on this game. AJ, I'm going to start with you, mate, because we had a conversation before the game, obviously, like we always do, about potential lineups, some changes that will be made, some things that we were looking out for. Overall, I know we made some changes in the game. I wasn't too disappointed with the changes that were made. I think some of them were needed. We know the Robinson change was probably down to injury. Still think Iwobi needs a couple of weeks rest, but ultimately it wasn't too disappointing of a starting lineup. It was a bit of a shock to see Ryan Sess playing left back though. But what did you think?
yeah, I think you called it with Robinson needing a break. I think Mozza called it with Lukic needing a break, and I think nobody called it when they had this late in the season Iwobi being put in the number 8 when everyone else has called for him to have a break. Something that me and Drew have discussed in the past and said that earlier on in the season when he was in good form, we wouldn't have minded seeing him in the 8. Not entirely sure it's what we were expecting going into that game against Southampton. Sess at left back, I agree with everybody in that he's not a left back, but I think he gets away with it in games where we're facing essentially championship opposition. Outside of that, I think it's very much as expected, although seeing Willian start over Wilson, maybe a bit, they both start. I can't remember now. So many changes, but Willian starting the full game was quite something to behold.
Yeah, but they both played. Obviously, William and Wilson played, but it was a bit of a shock because we pretty much hadn't. We sort of swapped him around completely on the wing and had both wings completely changed, which is a bit of a shock when you think that obviously there's no Robertson there. You'd think that if it was going to change on that side, it would be to make sure that Ryan has like extra cover. But ultimately, our problem on Saturday wasn't necessarily defending; it was the other end of the pitch. But it's frustrating. It was. We'll get on to talk about that. Mozza, we spoke on Friday, obviously, well, Thursday when we did the preview of the game about the fact that it's probably going to be quite a lot of Southampton players that will play this game. Shackles off a bit, there's no pressure on them now. They know they're already relegated, and we know that there's quite a few of them that were playing for potentially, moves to other Premier League clubs now that the season's going to be coming to an end. There was a couple of really good performances by some of those Southampton players. Carl Walker-Peters is someone that Fulham have been linked to today. He put in a good shift for Southampton on Saturday, and it was if it was an audition to come to play for Fulham, he impressed.
Yeah, I mean, we kept throwing his name around when we did the preview show as well for playing him, and I think his name was probably said the most out of all of the other Southampton players as ones to watch. So I wonder how it would have gone had we lost. Would he be still interested or linked to us at the end of the game? But yeah, I mean, even the way the first half went as well, I wasn't surprised at what happened, but I did feel hopeless. So, yeah, I don't know where the source is from with Walker-Peters being linked to us. So I hope it's right, and I don't think there's any excuse or any reason why we can't bring him in. So definitely one to watch, and definitely a player that we need to add to our squad to enhance it, especially if there's any chance we get to Europe.
Yeah, we're not going to mention Europe too much because there's a lot going on. Every time we talk about it, the next game just turns out to be a complete flip on its head. What we're talking about, Drew, you were at the game on Saturday. I thought we played quite well. I know we were getting really frustrated by the fact that I thought we played quite well, but we had that same problem of just not being able to put the ball in any dangerous position going forward. Between the boxes, we looked okay, we looked decent, but again, it's pointless if you're going to concede sloppy headers from free kicks and then not be able to put the ball on target. You were out of the game. What was your general feeling of the game being?
What did I think? Well, we opened it up like within the first 3 minutes. Sessegnon got caught so far forward, he was almost in the sea. If it hadn't been for Bassey being immense at the back and being able to cover two positions, a better team would have really exploited our left back position. Everyone adores Sess, and the fans' reaction to him at the end of the game, which we will get onto, says it all. But if at any point this season it was underlined to Silva that Sessegnon just isn't a defender, it should have been Saturday, because Walker Peters dumped him on his ass a couple of times, and he got caught out of position quite a lot. And I'm not going to criticise Sess because he's just not a defender, but I've got to disagree with you saying we played well, Ash. Because we were whiskey Alpha November Kilo. That's what we were. Everyone around me just couldn't believe how bad it was. I mean, you looked at it and it was just like, give me strength. There were some good performances. Strangely enough, I agree with everything that's been said about Iwobi. I've been wanting to see him in the centre for a while, but if Europe wasn't on the cards, I would shut him down now. And just say, look, Alex, you're fabulous, but you need to go on holiday. Berge was really, really pedestrian, not like he normally is. The centre halves were fine, bar the complete breakdown for the opening goal. But when we went forward, we just allowed Southampton to get back behind the ball and let them play with 11 men behind the ball. And we were sideways to sideways, and no one was going beyond Raul, and it was just awful. Fulham got booed off at halftime. And it was just not good. It really wasn't. So, with the greatest respect, I mean, obviously, you might have been watching on the stream, mate, that wasn't illegal, just for anyone from the Premier League who's tuning in right now, because I know we're all on your watch list. It might have looked good on the stream, but it sure as hell didn't look good in St Mary's. I can tell you that for free. I mean, quite frankly, I would have rather paid 10 quid and just gone in for the last 15 minutes to save myself that grief. It was just like, you got to be shitting me. Are we actually watching this? Is this actually happening? When we went 1-0 down, I messaged you guys. We had played 3 halves of football against Southampton and failed to score, and they'd scored one against us. That was just where it was. I mean, it was capital whiskey Alpha November Kilo, mate. Absolutely.
When I say we played well, I just thought our ball retention was pretty good, considering the fact that the last couple of games we've been really sloppy on the ball. But we didn't offer anything, and sadly, there was at one point during the second half, and we'll get to that in a minute, where we'd had 15 shots in the game and not a single one on target, and that's a worrying stat. That's not even a like oh, look at that stands out. That's a worrying stat. 15 shots and none on target is horrendous. But luckily we managed to turn it around, and we'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about something that I feel like we have to, and that is Marco Silva made 2 half-time substitutions. We've been moaning for weeks about the fact that he isn't sort of proactive enough with changing the game around. AJ, you've spoken about this loads, right? It was really good to see. It was needed. It was definitely needed to make those subs. Whether or not you agree with the 2 subs that were made. Yeah. It's really nice to see that, he's being a bit proactive and you can see that there was an issue there.
Yeah, it's nice to finally see. Go on.
Go. No, you go, mate.
I was going to say, it's nice to see finally some tactical changes. Maybe not the personnel I would have necessarily taken off, but it worked out all right in the end. How Iwobi played for as long as he did, I still don't quite understand. He looked like he was on his last legs within 30 minutes of the first half, but alas, the substitutions came and they were positive and they were actually tactical. We saw two central midfielders come off for what was it, two wingers ultimately? Who came on? Yeah, well,
half-time it was Lukic
Emil
and
Smith Rowe, yeah.
Well, Lukic and Traore came on at half time,
Okay,
but
so
it
one
did
central
just mean that
midfielder and a
we
winger, yeah. Yeah, so we lost the central midfielder, which then allowed Wilson to move into the 10, which is something I've been screaming for a very long time. Ultimately, it didn't seem to do much in terms of Wilson's impact into the game, but it certainly changed our style of football and our ball retention a little bit more. Not to mention that we then continued to make subs later on into the game that again changed the way we played. So for once, we actually played a different style of football in the second half than we did the first half. And I think that is the only time this season I've been able to say that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because we've been moaning about it for weeks and weeks about the fact that sometimes we don't have a plan B, the substitute like for like, and it was refreshing to see that we could change it up a little bit. Whether that's because Wilson's now back in the squad and he's a bit more versatile in the sense of playing on the wing or playing centrally, and we haven't had that. I don't know. But I was quite happy with the subs that were made. I thought they put in a little bit more impetus into our play, But again, we have that same problem where we can get the ball to the edge of the box and we do nothing with it as soon as we get there. Like Drew, you weren't here when we were moaning about it on Friday about how much of it's a concern of ours. It keeps happening. It keeps on happening. Do you think it's a pattern of play issue with Fulham, or do you think it's just a case of we go for the insanity approach to play where it's, it isn't broke, but it isn't working, but we're still just keep doing the same thing over and over again?
Sorry, mate. I'm being you. Forgive me. You broke up, Ash, and I lost the thrust of the question. What was it?
So I was just asking, like, when do you find it frustrating that when we're attacking, when we're having those games where between the boxes we're looking decent, but we can't do anything as soon as we get to the edge of the opposition's boxes, but nothing changes in the sense of our approach of trying to take the ball in? Is it frustrating, or is it just one of those things that this is how Marco wants us to play, and we're just going to keep like nutritionally doing it until eventually it works? Or do you think that we need to be a little bit more proactive and try to have people on the pitch who can change what we're doing?
I think you go around any Premier League team fans, and they will all talk about a lack of a plan B, and they'll all talk about there's always criticisms to be made. Silva's got a very distinct way of playing. The problem is, I mean, this is I'm just looking. Forgive me, Ash. I'm just looking at some of the things I was saying because I was essentially live reporting from the game, and it was the fact that we were relying on Willian to open up the Saints defence at 36 years young. Willian, who's a wonderfully technically gifted player, spent a lot of his time doing his own audition for Bambi on Ice because he kept falling over. Raul, again, because he's generally on another level in terms of his football IQ, was pulling out of the centre forward position, trying to hunt the ball. You've got to say, I think, that Silva's got a defined way of playing, but I think that the squad, and I said this in our private chat at the time, that if we lose, unless Silva's at the time we were losing when I sent this message, I said, if we lose, unless Silva's going to come out and say he needs a boatload of cash, to get Fulham to the next level, he might as well skip the post-match interview because we can't say that we were unlucky or we deserve to win because that's just not going to cut it. We're at the business end of the season now. It's got to be with Silva's never going to be a direct He's never going to go for direct football. But I, and especially AJ, have been bemoaning all season that outside of Robinson, we've got no explosive plays. We'll break, and then we'll check back in because we play inverted wingers, giving the other teams time to reorganise, or we'll have to check back in to let the rest of our pensioners catch up. So I think a lot of it is, I think it's the things we've been discussing all season. I mean, full credit to Marco because he's, like I've said, I think I said this in the previous show that I was on. He's coached the hell out of this team. But I think the second half of this season, especially in probably the last 10 games, I think we've really seen the limits of how far he can take us with what he's got. So I think the short answer to your question, Ash, I think it's a combination of Silva's preferred style of play, but the limitations of the squad as well.
Yeah, it could be frustrating at times. We were lucky, I think, that on Saturday he made another couple of subs and they worked. I thought Traore, for the first time in a little while, actually looked like every time he got the ball, something might actually happen. I know that he's not always the most eloquent on the ball, right? He's not always elegant enough to sort of run past 4 players and then do bits with it. But a couple of times on Saturday, he had the ball in the outside on the wing and tried to bring it in. He set up the Willian shot where we hit the post, a couple of crosses into the box that were actually quite dangerous, and then eventually, obviously, sets up Sess, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But one of the other stuff we have to talk about was obviously ESR coming on. Now we've all moaned for ages that if you're losing in the game, ESR is not a sub that you want to make because he's not usually very good at dealing with things, and and being that player who just looks to cut through when you're trying to sort of scramble for a goal. But he worked on Saturday. I thought ESR came on and he looked okay. He looked like he probably had more legs than he's had in a little while. Whether that's been because he's had a couple of weeks break and he sort of needed it, or Marco Silva's doing that thing where he's sort of mentally trying to help him out as much as he is off the pitch. We won't know that because they won't talk about it, obviously. But even for his goal, he did something that he hadn't done in a very long time. I think he did it once during pre-season. One of the pre-season goals he scored against Hoffenheim was pretty much the same, where he looked to make the run down the middle. The ball comes over the top, and then rather than trying to make a pass out to wherever Iwobi is, he actually just tried to control the ball himself, and then he takes on a shot. That shot obviously gets the deflection and goes over, and we score. But it's good to see ESR trying something different than how he has been, and I think it's massively down to confidence with him. And then obviously we then face a 15-20 minute battle with Southampton where I think they're holding on. They're massively holding on. I think they've sort of blown a gasket a little bit, and we'd obviously scored and we're really rejuvenised trying to score. And luckily for us, one of those attacks worked off. We'll talk about Sess as much because we all love him. The crossing to him from Adama Traore is brilliant. The header's fantastic. I think I've watched the header back about 10 or 11 times since he's done it, and every single time I've watched it back, it gets better and better because the technique in order to swoop down and to get ahead on it and to control it on target is absolutely superb. Jack, before we Mozza, before we sort of go into our man of the match and stuff, I know you always love talking about Ryan Sessegnon and how he makes you feel emotionally, but he's getting a really good knack of scoring late goals at the moment for Fulham, and it can only be a positive thing, especially considering that he played the game from left back on Saturday. He still managed to nab a goal for us.
Yeah, the old left back thing is funny, but like we've already said, he proved he can do it. But well, what I wanted to say was that he's once again proved his place in the team in the starting 11 for me, like over and over. I'm trying to think, had we not convinced him to come back to Fulham, where we would be. It's not a nice thought. It's quite negative to worry about all that. But yeah, what would we have done without him? Like, thank God, really. And I know Drew earlier said he didn't have the best starts and all that, but yeah, I mean, it's madness. It is madness. I think if he doesn't start the rest of the games that we've got left in the season, he has to. Just hopefully not at left back. Again, not to keep reverting back to what's already been said or what any of you guys say, but when Drew mentioned about Robinson doing these explosive runs, I think Sessegnon is capable of that as well, and paired with Wilson, that is what we need. That's what I've been screaming for all season. I know I'm repeating myself. Everything I say is not going to be original right now, but yeah, let's drive the ball forward on the inside and stop trying to cross it into the box, because for me, that technique does not work every game. But yeah, love you, Ryan Sessegnon. I'll do you another song if you keep scoring goals, mate. I mean, it is your job, but there you go.
Well, it's
that's
not
not
his job.
motivation. I don't know what
it's not his job. It's not his job, but it's a great thing to see. Obviously, you know, we all knew that when Ryan came back in the summer, it's not a signing that any Fulham player is going to turn their nose up at. We all love him. We loved him when he left, because even though he left in the right way. You know, it's one of those things that we all would have been happy to see him doing this for whatever football team he's playing for. The fact he's come back to Fulham and he's still doing it, and he's doing it for us again, it's just magic, you know. And the longer it continues, the better. Let's finish this review the way we always do. Honourable mentions and man of the matches. AJ, I'll start with you, mate. Give us a couple of mentions and a man of the match for the game, please. On mute.
I think Anderson had a very sorry. I've been having a bit of a coughing fit recently, so I'm trying to save the fans. I'm trying to save the fans from just hearing me cough the entire episode. Yeah, I think Anderson had a very good game. I think it was a well-deserved performance for him. Bassey equally just as strong, as Drew alluded to earlier. Bassey basically covered two positions on his own, with Iwobi occasionally dropping into that left back role when Sess went forward. But frankly, I'm not sure who I prefer worse at left back. A very tired and overrun Iwobi, or a Sessegnon that isn't a left back. Raul did okay for what he was doing throughout the game. He wasn't being much of a striker, more of a link-up player. But I think my credit goes to Ryan. He was very direct, very, very courageous, and very strong-willed when he attacked the ball. And ultimately, it's his desire to get in the box and make something happen that resulted in the final goal. So I'm actually going to give my man of the match to someone who was way out of position in Ryan Sessegnon.
Yes, not since Danny Murphy at Portsmouth as a player scored being that far out of position for Fulham, but we'll have it. Mozza, mate, what about you? Give us your honourable mentions and your man of the match, please.
Not to keep repeating myself, but yeah, well, I can't talk at the moment. Sorry, it's like I've seen the best World Cup final ever. I haven't. Yeah, man of the match. Yes, Ryan Sessegnon, if not for the goal, just for the goal alone, rather. The angle on the header, as you explained, Ash. And I will give an honourable mention to Traore as well, just for that cross. It's all about that second goal for me, which is what we really needed. Obviously, the 3 points.
Yeah, I can't really argue with those. And Drew, what about you, mate? You at the game, so you have a real honest view of it. So, what was your view? Some honourable mentions and a man of the match, please.
Honourable mentions. I think full credit to ESR. We've been screaming for someone to get ahead of the forwards and drift into the box, and he did that. I don't know whether it was because of the timing of his run or the fact that the Saints are woeful defensively, but he ghosted in past 3 defenders. And I know he got lucky with the deflection, but he had to be there. So good on him. Traore definitely made a difference when he came on. And Sessegnon was good in parts. And it was that sort of game. People had moments. I don't think anyone was consistently, good. Beginning of the game, poor AJ had been given duff information about the team sheet. He didn't realise Ryan was playing. And so within a couple of minutes of the game started, AJ asked me where Ryan was, i.e. where he was playing, and I said to AJ, "Is pressuring the goalkeeper," and that's basically how it was. We improved significantly when Lukic came on and took control of the midfield. I mean, he looked like Lukic. Kenny came on and right idea because we had most of the ball, but it was all frenetic then. And Tom's pace isn't about hurrying. Tom's pace is about picking a pass, and we were desperate at the time. And it's difficult for me because I don't think that throughout the whole game someone was just completely outstanding. It's very strange. I mean, I suppose you've got to pick a man in a match for. I don't know. Have you really? I mean, Sess came up with a crucial goal, but these were all moments. I suppose if we can find someone who was on the field for the whole game, it would probably be one of the two centre backs. I mean, if you take away the brain freeze that was their goal, because I don't know what you boys thought about it on the stream, but I was directly level with it, and I could see soon as the free kick was taken, it was going in. It was just, we knew what was going to happen, and I cannot explain it, but yeah, Bassi was, especially when Ryan went missing in action. Bassi was covering two positions, and he was. Yeah, I'll probably give it Bassi with the honourable mentions that I've made.
I don't need any excuses to sing Calvin Bassi's praises. Everyone knows I love him, but I thought he was outstanding on Saturday for that exact reason. You know, we know that Ryan Sessegnon is going to try his best to not be a left back, even when he's playing left back, because he has natural instincts going forward that other players probably don't have. And I think that shows, especially with the goal that he scored. He has natural goal scoring instincts, which is something you cannot teach a footballer, and it's not something you can knock out of a footballer, because when you're playing a game, you'll naturally drift because your body's telling you to go somewhere because you think the ball's going to go there, and he does it. So Calvin had to have again, not where he was superb in his position, but he obviously covering Ryan as well. He had to be just as good to do that, and I thought he did an outstanding job of that. Sess obviously he had moments in the game where he probably looked a bit out of place. Again, probably because he's playing left back, and that first couple of minutes where he sort of bombs up the wing and then Southampton attack and we look like we're absolutely struggling. Like that's not a shock to me. I've seen Anthony Robinson do it 5 or 6 times this season too. So to see someone who naturally wants to be that player bombing forward isn't shocking. But for me, I think I would give man of the match to Adama Traore. I know some people might be a bit confused by that, but watching the game, but I genuinely think he gave us a bit of impetus going forward that we haven't had in a little while. The problem is with Adama is that we get these games 1 in 12 with him, that where he's absolutely superb and we're wondering why he's starting games, and then he has 5 or 6 games where he's an absolute dud. But I thought he was brilliant on Saturday. He looked fearless on the ball, and I don't know, it's just because maybe Southampton really stepped off of him and they gave him so much space and time, but I thought he was superb and he really changed the game for us. Forget the cross of Ryan Sessegnon's header, that alone was brilliant, but as a whole I thought he completely changed our game. And Lukic, obviously, as you say, did that too. For once, the 2 substitutions that were made because we really needed them really worked, and they both did their jobs in doing that, and it was nice to see that we brought a little bit of control in the middle of the pitch with Lukic, and then we looked a bit more dangerous out on the wing with Adama there. And I think it also helped that Harry Wilson was just on the inside of him as well, because it gave us a little bit of an option. There could be a little bit of change up, and I think that really helped, because it sort of put a little bit of two-mindedness in the defending by Southampton. So overall, the result's great. The performance wasn't so much great. I look at the facts of the game, that there are some really concerning stats from the game on Saturday, in the sense of, we had 64% possession. Arguably, that's not so surprising playing against a struggling Southampton team. The fact that we only had 5 shots on target and we had 26 shots in total, that's a real concern for me. It took 16 shots before we had 1 on target, and even then, that only went in because it was deflected off of the defender. So it's a bit worrying that. We also had 13 corners, and if anyone can show me video of anyone not hitting the first man or going over absolutely everybody, I'll give them something, because it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
To be fair, Ash, in the first half, Pereira actually missed the first man, but he's now started targeting the goalkeeper.
Mm.
There you go. There you go.
And then Kearney, literally, I kid you not, second half, Kearney put in a cracking corner, and the Fulham fans were absolutely gobsmacked. Didn't know what the fuck was going on.
I think the fact that barely anybody attacked it, the players are just as gobsmacked as well. But it's one of those things. But lads, thank you very much for joining me for this review. I know that getting that win at Southampton is great because it means that for once we're not Robin Hooding our way through this football division. We're still keeping our European hopes up as much as we're not wanting to talk about that. We'll be back on Friday with our preview of the game this weekend at Villa Park, a game which we're all really excited to be going to.
Sorry to interrupt you just quickly. For any Fulham fans that are curious about, and I don't want to preempt our future shows about transfer activity, Carl Walker-Peters is definitely worth going after. And so is Fernandez, their number 18. He was quality. Real quality, strong, carried the ball. I was kind of hoping that we could swap 18s at half time and see if anyone actually noticed. But if any Fulham fans are curious, if there's anyone worth picking out the Southampton team, definitely those two. But sorry, Ash, I'll keep my mouth shut now.
No. It's absolutely a fair point to make, mate. I'm going to let you make that point because they're both players I mentioned in the pre-match about players to watch out for. So. I'll let you have that. They're on my two picks. So, we'll be back on Friday for our Villa preview. Again, we're all excited because we are all going to as a team. We're having our sort of away day social as a team. So we'll all
recording
Fulham on tour.
Yeah,
if you see us, come say hi.
We'll be
you
there.
Might end up in a YouTube video.
We'll be there as a team ourselves. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a hard game, obviously, but we'll review that on Friday when we come to talk about it. Hope you all have a good week. Hope there's not too much mental news in the world of Fulham, but who knows with what's going on at the moment. Other than that, have a good time and come on, you Whites.